Coming to you live from the Garage of Solitude here in Whitestone, Queens, I am Mario Francisco Robles, and this is the first ever Superman on Film post-show live stream for Superman and Lois. I plan on doing one of these after every single new episode of this fourth and final season of the show. After every episode, you come to the YouTube channel 15 minutes later, and there will be a post-show, and sometimes I will have friends on with me. I'll find other Superman and Lois super fans who are going to come on and discuss the show with me. But for this inaugural edition of the post-show live stream, I wanted to just handle it solo. So right now, I got to tell you, I just spent 2 hours upstairs watching this. I had my son by my side. It was his first episode of the show ever. I did my best to catch him up and let him know more or less what to be expecting from this. And he seemed to understand the monumental nature of it, that we were basically getting a Superman movie to kick off this final season of Superman and Lois with a 2-hour season premiere. So, and not just that, but we're going to be tackling the death of Superman. It's just, he understood the enormity of it, and he had the option to go to bed early or stay on the couch and watch Superman and Lois with his old man, and he stuck around and did that. So I want to talk a little bit before I get into how I think it all went. I want to just kind of share my thoughts on the series overall, because on the main Superman on Film podcast, I very rarely get to talk about this show because I'm mainly talking about Superman movies, you know? But when it comes to Superman and Lois, I happen to think that this is the very best bit of live action Superman content that we've gotten since Superman 2. Okay? Full stop. Since Superman 2, I don't think we've gotten Superman content that is as good as Superman and Lois has been through these first 3 seasons. I love in general that finally we have something that takes the Superman story and moves it forward. You know, in the original Donner films, we basically saw the core origin story and then what led into his first few years of being Superman for the most part, right? And then with Man of Steel, we got to see him as the last orphan of Krypton and his first mission on Earth and what would essentially amount to the first couple of years of his life as Superman. But we've never gotten to see any stories that really delve into years and years later, with him firmly established as Superman, with him now together with Lois actually having kids, and now they're in their early 40s. Like, we've never seen Superman this way before. So it's always been an exciting thing for me to get to kind of take a view into this world, into this chapter of Clark's life that we've never really gotten to see. I've always kind of compared it to like Cobra Kai. This is like the Cobra Kai for all of Superman. You know, it's like it's the sequel series. It's the Where Are They Now of the Superman mythology. And in certain instances, you're seeing characters that you've always loved, and now you're seeing them sort of aged up and with a new twist on them. But in other cases, we're seeing old characters reinvented and reintroduced in an all new way in this mythology. So to me, I've always found the series very inventive, very just, it has all the right elements. It's got the heart, it's got the emotion, it's got the Superman-sized spectacle, and more than anything, it gives us an insight into Superman's life that we've never really seen on screen before. You know, the little moments that you might have seen in certain graphic novels and that you could have, imagine would have been there. But we've never actually gotten to see these things play out. And seeing Clark and Lois and their sons and that whole dynamic, over these years, it's just, I have such a huge soft spot for this series. And I think Tyler Hoechlin is doing a phenomenal job as Superman and as Clark. And Bitsy Tulloch, I think she's just an amazing Lois. I mean, we're going to get to her, but she's the thing that pulled me in. She's the thing that really got me going for this episode, for this season premiere. Because, okay, let's talk about my expectations a little bit heading into this. Because honestly, see, one of the things I've loved about the series is how sort of new it all feels. Through the first 3 seasons, I have constantly felt like, wow, I never saw this character this way. Oh, what a creative, new, insane way to present this story that I haven't seen before. I've loved the newness of it all, right? And yet, here we are doing the Death of Superman storyline again. And if you're someone who's been watching Superman in live action and on screen for the last 10 years, you'll remember that in 2016, a certain film called Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, which ended up dooming the entire DCEU as we knew it, came out. And in that, we saw the Death of Superman story play out. And not just that little bit of deja vu, but even the setup for this version of Doomsday killing Superman is the same, right? Because in the comics, Doomsday is created off planet in some lab, and he's this alien creature that keeps getting sent out into a harsh landscape and getting killed in insane ways and being brought in and resuscitated and trying to get it to, over time, learn to evolve and become an unstoppable killing machine, because however which way you kill it, it's going to come back stronger and able to prevent itself from dying that way again. Right? It was just an alien creature off planet who eventually ends up strapped to an asteroid floating in the outer space. That's the original Doomsday, right? But what did they do in Batman versus Superman? In Batman versus Superman, Lex Luthor found a way to get a dead Kryptonian and do some things to it, and it morphs into Doomsday. That's what happened in Batman versus Superman. And what happened now on Superman and Lois? Lex Luthor found a dead Kryptonian. Listen, granted, Bizarro is a clone, so he's not, an organically grown, farm fresh Kryptonian, but he's the genetics of a Kryptonian. So once again, Lex Luthor gets a dead Kryptonian and finds a way to turn him into Doomsday. Now, granted, I like this one a lot better. The way they handled it on Superman and Lois is much better and is much closer to the comic book origins, where we got to see last season how he created this Doomsday by essentially doing the same thing from the comic book origin, with the killing it over and over again in different ways each time, so that he comes back stronger and able to fight against whatever it was that killed him last time. So this particular version of Doomsday I liked, and it was cooler and it was closer to the original source material. But at the end of the day, it's still Lex reanimating a dead Kryptonian and turning him into Doomsday. So coming into this, my expectations were a little bit, are we really doing the Death of Superman again? Are we doing it this way again instead of just trying to do something that's like from the comics, But now that I've seen the 2-hour season premiere, I can confidently and comfortably say they did it. They pulled it off. All right. They got me really invested. And what's funny is too, that I want to just jump right to the big moment, right? The big actual Death of Superman moment. And then we can kind of break things out and talk about some high points and low points from this 2-hour premiere. But let's get right to the actual Death of Superman, because I'll be honest, at the very start of that sequence, when when Doomsday has landed back on Earth and he's got Superman's limp body in his hands, I was still kind of feeling a little bit like, I'm not feeling the feels, because I know that he's not really dead, right? And I know that he's going to be back in a few episodes, so this death feels a little bit, I felt a little bit, But then Bitsy Tulloch, the actress who plays Lois, right away when the camera goes to her, and she's taking those first steps towards his body on the ground, and you see her realizing like, oh my God, I am about to see him not alive anymore. Like everything got real quiet for me, and I felt like a chill. And then they go into the flashbacks where you see all the images, all the key moments from them together. And the way they set that up, putting you in Lois's shoes, suddenly that brought me right to my knees. And when she finally does see him dead and starts crying and the whole thing, like, I was a mess. I started crying during the flashbacks because right away I realized, like, she's not ready for this. And I, as a Superman fan, I know he's going to come back, but Lois doesn't know. And these boys, they don't know. So they're about to see their world dead on the ground. You know, like watching that, man, that threw me like that. Like, and it's funny because again, it caught me by surprise because I was thinking I wasn't going to feel anything again. I was like, oh man, this is going to be like in Batman versus Superman again, where Superman's going to die right in front of me and I'm not going to feel sad. I'm going to feel kind of about it. You know, and for that movie, I felt about it because the whole thing felt so rushed and sort of anticlimactic to me. And I wasn't in love with that version of Superman yet. And for this one, it was more like, I know he's going to be back in an episode or two, so I'm not going to get too caught up in thinking he's dead. You know, I really thought like, I wasn't feeling it. But the way that they got us there, the way that they put us in Lois's shoes, and the tragic realization that while we know, us comic book fans, us nerds, we on the outside of all of this, we know he'll be back in a few episodes in some way, shape, or form, but they don't, and they are going to have to deal with this tragic loss right now. Like the whole, the immensity of that moment really just brought me to my knees. And I got to tell you, it felt really good for that moment to land because I was a little worried. You know, I was like, is he going to die and I'm really not going to feel anything again? I was, but lo and behold, I felt something. So now let's talk about the episode itself. I've got some notes here. Right out of the gate, you know, that haunting image of the floating cape in the asteroid field when they're there, you know, fighting amidst the rubble off the moon, and they're having this crazy space battle, Superman and Doomsday. Like, we saw that red floating cape is in posters, and we saw it in trailer images. And I don't know about you, but I thought that was just going to be like, you know, it's a promotional image. You know, they're trying to sell the idea of Superman's in danger. Look at his tattered cape. You know, but showing several pieces of suspended, floating in anti-gravity shreds of cape, like that was very visually arresting. And right out of the gate, it made this first half of the season premiere an impactful one. Because the visuals, and you could tell the budget for this is really high. You could tell that, listen, we're down to 10 episodes. And that was another reason why my expectations were a little bit like, oh man, the show got shortened. I know that they also cut out some series regulars. You know, I know there's some budgetary concerns. So I really hope they pull this off. But really, that first scene and the way it looked and the way it felt and the way it brought, you know, just the way it continued on from the intensity of the last season. You know, I just right out of the gate, I thought, wow, this is intense. I am in. And in general, I started thinking about, for Jordan and Jonathan, imagine having to suddenly come to grips with this idea of their father's mortality. I mean, their father is Superman. You know, and even for Lois, this idea of like, you have to now imagine a world without him. Like, that has to be the most insane thing. And yeah, I'm watching these scenes play out and it's like, yeah, this is, you know, you could see that they aren't ready for it. And it's really heartbreaking because in real life, you often feel that way where you know, Jordan says this thing where I'm not ready to do this without him. And I feel like anyone who's lost someone, you know that feeling where it's like, I thought I had more time. I thought we were going to accomplish more things together. You know, I've had that in my life where there was someone who I had tickets to go see them. I was flying to visit them in 12 days and they passed away. You know, so that scene where Jordan said, I'm not ready to do this without him. Like, that killed me. And then they go to Lois looking at the sign in the Smallville kitchen that says, it goes by so fast. At first, I'm sure that was referring to the kids growing up, and Martha and Jonathan had that in their kitchen. That's their kitchen. So they were probably thinking about how quickly Clark grew up. But Lois is looking at it like, my time with Clark went by so fast. She, unlike Jordan and Jonathan, who seemed blindsided by this, it looked like Lois on some level had her guard up, scared that something might kill Clark one day because there's people out there who want to hurt him. And the guilt and the weight of that was on her, so just, the drama and the stakes of this show is just, Oh, I got some comments from the live things. Let me just, hey, novice cinephiles in the house. Yes, we're live in the Garage of Solitude. And let's see. All right. Michael says he loved these first 3 episodes. That's right. You got to see the first 3 because you're a fancy schmancy critic, man. Writing that review and following the do not reveal list was hard. Glad we could finally talk about it. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have you on the show. I'm going to have you on one of these upcoming shows for sure. And yes, keep the comments coming, folks. I'm going to try to have it not totally interrupt the show. But getting back to where I was, Lois grappling with his mortality, the boys grappling with his mortality. It's heavy, heavy stuff. And, to put yourself in their shoes is, it's unimaginable stuff. But when we went back to the battle, it was pretty neat that amongst the other Batman versus Superman references, like the way that they created this Doomsday, they did have the cool shot where the two of them are shooting the laser beams at each other. That was right out of that battle scene from BVS. So that was a neat little Easter egg. But you know what was excellent for me? I was not expecting all the flashbacks because I was kind of worried. Like, are we about to watch a 2-hour Superman movie that really doesn't have much Superman in it? Where he's going to have hardly any dialogue and we're just going to see him fighting this thing that's ultimately just going to kill him. It's like, is that really what you're going to make me do, Todd Helbing and Greg Berlanti? But then no, they gave us all these beautiful flashbacks and they took us back to some of the key seminal moments that we've heard about or that we've seen parts of, but now we got to see the part B too. Like we've seen the image of Clark revealing himself as Superman to Lois on the farm, but we've never seen the scene afterward in the kitchen where she's taking it all in. And we got to see that scene this time. And then we got to see how that scene leads into Lois and Clark making love for the first time, and it's Clark's first time ever. It's very touching stuff, and it makes you really just understand the palpable and important connection between these two characters. And that's something I felt in general, with the flashbacks going to such key moments and with such huge things happening in these first 2 hours. You can sense that this season there is a sense of urgency in the writing of this show. Remember, they thought they were going to get 7 seasons to tell this story. Now they know all they've got is 10 episodes. And right out of the gate, you could tell that they are trying to make each episode count as much as possible. So it felt like every scene was filled with interesting stuff, and they're still teasing stuff for the future. I don't know if you caught this. I had to rewind and throw on the captions to make sure I heard this correctly. But did you catch when Lex is given the case for Superman's heart, the empty case, because they're about to receive it, and his assistant says that she got it from Milton, and when he compliments the work, she says, well, let's not tell that Brainiac it'll go to his head. I mean, Milton, this is Brainiac. They're teasing Brainiac. Okay, this is actually happening here. So, and right away, my theory spiraling starts to go nuts because in the flashbacks, we also see this idea that somebody has some sort of pipeline to kryptonite in the flashback scenes, and Superman keeps getting into fights with people who have kryptonite. And ultimately, Lois is the one who figures out that that, that Lex is the pipeline, that Lex is the one providing kryptonite to the villains of Metropolis. It's Lex who's trying to kill Superman, and that's why she puts all of her efforts into trying to take Lex down. I love that they gave her that legitimate motivation for going after Lex. It's not just that he's a bad guy. He's trying to kill my man. Like, I get it. I love it. They made it personal. You know what I mean? Oh, Mark is here. Mark says, I believe there was an Easter egg from the Action Comics book cover from the original Death of Superman comic book storyline with that close-up of Doomsday and Superman staring at each other. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. They did basically recreate that cover. Absolutely. When they were face to face. 100%, Mark. 100%. But what I find interesting is if he's got Milton working in the shadows, creating tech for him, and he knows he's some kind of egghead, right? Maybe that means that Brainiac has been Lex's source this whole time. Maybe we're going to find out that the way Lex has been getting kryptonite at all this time is because he's had a direct line to Brainiac. So I just think that that's interesting. But now that we know that Milton Fine, Brainiac, is somewhere lurking in the background and he's one of Lex's minions in a way, I love that. Let's see. Michael says Lex hates Lois just as much as Superman, and that makes the stakes even higher. I love it. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the fact that Lex has a legitimate 1,000% reason to hate Lois really does make this Lex much more interesting. He's not just some maniac with a blind hatred, or he's just randomly mad at Lois because, or not randomly, but he's mad at her because she's threatening to unveil his darker side. No, she legitimately put him in jail for 17 years. Like, it makes his vengeance and his quest that much more palpable and that much more easy to sink your teeth into. You can feel the gravity of the situation, and then we got a real flashback into the Metropolis Daily Planet. That's something that we've only ever gotten quick glimpses of. We've seen the quick little moment from the opening montage, season 1, episode 1. I've watched those first 3 minutes 1,000 times. But we saw that opening scene, the quick shot of them meeting in the Daily Planet. And we've gotten passing little moments here and there. But we once again got to go back to them in the bullpen, Clark and Lois in Metropolis at the Daily Planet. And I loved getting them, a little bit, getting to see a little bit of that. And I did find it interesting, though, that it seems like kryptonite in general is not as deadly to this Superman as it is to other versions of Superman, right? Like, if he was able to come to work and he had a kryptonite shard in his neck that he wasn't even sure was there until Lois pulled it out, that means that kryptonite is definitely not as effective as it is in other versions of the story. And let me see. Yeah, honestly, one of the big surprises, though, right? The decision to not just make it a 2-hour episode, but rather to actually just make it 2 episodes glued onto each other, so that one legitimately ends with end credits and a flash forward of this season on Superman and Lois. And then the second one starts with a recap of basically what we just saw, and then it goes into the action again. I found that decision a little puzzling. Why not just make it 1 2-hour extravaganza? That was a little confusing. And it's also interesting, though, because you could tell, I guess they must have really treated it like its own episode, because for this second episode, this is where they brought back a couple of the characters who are used to be series regulars, but are now just going to be used sparingly to save money. And that is Lana and her daughter. And you could tell this is where one of the areas, this was the low point of today's premiere, if you ask me. The scene with Lana and her daughter and the 5 Smallville citizens on the street while Lois, Jordan, and John are having their moment with Superman. That scene to me felt kind of It just felt like there needed to be more extras there, more hubbub, and maybe more familiar faces. But again, they can't afford to have Kyle there and the girlfriend, the pregnant girlfriend from the Smallville Gazette. They can't afford to have them all in one episode. So they got to use everything sparingly. So you just had Lana telling these like 5 randos, please just back away and give them some time. Like, look, I understood the reason, like, for the scene. Like, oh, I kind of liked that she realizes now that if people see Lois and these boys grieving Superman this way, they're going to connect that it's Clark. So I like Lana's quick thinking. Again, I like the thought behind the scene. Even the writing of the scene was fine. But the way it was staged and the way it was shot, it didn't hit. For me, that was the one scene where I was like, okay, I'm watching a TV show on the CW, you know? Michael says, yeah, I think the CW just wanted a bigger premiere late in the game. The screeners were 3 individual episodes too. Interesting. Yeah, but either way, so, you know, watching that scene, like that was the low point, and it came after the high point. Because to me, the high point of this season premiere was the actual death of Superman. That moment where they find him and Lois reacts and the boys react and the minute or so leading to it, the flashback leading to it. It was done so enormously well that was the high point. And then we basically went right after that into this awkwardly shot, empty feeling scene on the street of Smallville with the pedestrians. But, you know, all things considered, not a bad low point, okay? Not a bad low point. Very interesting to have Superman now in suspended animation at the fortress. So basically, he can't age. He's frozen in place until they find a way to bring him back. I mean, honestly, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how they're going to handle this because they stomped on the heart. The heart is gone. I thought, okay, this whole thing is going to be a quest to get the heart back into the chest cavity. And as it turns out, I guess not, because Lex stomped the heart and you saw the innards of the heart coming out. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm very curious as to what they're going to do. Are we going to find out that a Kryptonian heart can mend itself? Or are we going to find out that Superman can regrow his heart? I don't know. But I guess, you know, we're going to have to find out. And yeah, I think I kind of want to just leave it there. I don't want these post shows to be much more than a half hour. So I kind of want to just keep it here. My thoughts on the series premiere were it was like a 9 out of 10 as an overall 2-hour event. I thought overall they presented the death of Superman in a way that brought maximum gravitas. They started planting seeds for what a world without Superman's going to feel like for a while. This was essentially the Superboy comic book that happens after the death of Superman. You know, when we begin the reign of the Supermen, each of the 4 Supermen who would rise into Superman's place, they each got their own issues. And Superboy got a thing and Steel got a thing. So next episode, Steel is going to get his moment to shine as the person who tries to fill in for Superman's big red boots. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I'm very much looking forward to another live stream next week. Thank you to the handful of you who joined me on this inaugural attempt at this post-show live stream. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Until next time, life is chaos. Be kind. Up, up, and away. Bye, everybody. Am I still here? I'm still here. Bye. I've never done this before, okay?